Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Editor, proudly brought to you by VAE SA. This morning I am speaking with Massimo Del Grosso. He is the Chief Financial Officer for voestalpine, or VAE, here in South Africa as we know it. VAE has just announced their partnership with the African Track Technology Symposium, which will be taking place later this year and brought to you by Kimber Consulting. We also get a lowdown of what's happening at VAE, the African market, and some of their products. Massimo, for those of us who don't know about voestalpine, who I continue to call VAE, just give us a bit of a background and introduction.
Philippa, yes. voestalpine entered the South African market in 1997 when they acquired Cementation Railways, a small manufacturing plant in Isando. The plant was predominantly focused on supplying the underground mining industry with their turnouts, jump sets, small gauge turnouts as well as small profile rail 22 30 kilograms. They then expanded their footprint in South Africa in 2001 with the acquisition of what was then Transvaal Perway, with manufacturing facilities in Bloemfontein and Kimberley. It was a very strategic acquisition at the time, especially from a Kimberley perspective, where we do all our rail logistics. We weld rails up to 240 meter lengths and dispatch to site. We were very innovative at the time to introduce 60 meter rails into South Africa, where historically only 18 meters were imported into the country. Together with our logistics partners as well as our suppliers in Austria, we managed to bring in 60 meter rails, weld them up to 240 meter strings.
So you service both the rail and the mining sector? Okay.
Definitely. Sorry, just to go back, what was also quite interesting is with the acquisition of Bloemfontein and Kimberley, we then in 2007 merged our three operations into one legal operation, being voestalpine VAE SA, where all our manufacturing facilities fall under. At the same time, we introduced our BE partners, 26%, as well as 5% shareholding to all employees of a company across the board.
Your facilities right now, as it stands, how big is VAE in South Africa? Recently
we've expanded our footprint quite substantially in Isando. We built a new assembly plant where we do all the pre-assembly of complete turnouts. The workshop is approximately that one's approximately 10,000 square meters. We've got sidings going into the workshop, so that we can deliver complete pre-assembled turnouts on specialized tilt wagons, straight from the workshop onto the wagons, dispatched to site. So we've catered for that future need that the market will require. So our Isando facility at the moment, we've got approximately 40,000 square meters under roof. So it's not only the assembly, the final assembly, but we do the complete processing from raw rails that are imported or blanks, switchblades. We do all the machining, the drilling, the welding, bending, pre-assembly. We do our own chair production in-house, whether they be heat press chairs or weld on shoulder chairs, UP chairs, whichever ones. So we've got a lot of workstations, CNC workstations to do all of this. And yes, it's our center for turnouts in Isando. In Kimberley, we've kept as our center purely for rail logistics. So all our rail goes through Kimberley. Our shorter lengths partly also go through Kimberley, where they then will cut them down to size for production requirements in Isando. The overall Isando facility is approximately 75,000 square meters, of which 40,000 under roof. So it is a substantial investment. What is great about the facility as well is that we can comply with government's requirements. There was a directive issued by the Ministry of Treasury just over a year ago, requiring 100% local content in our sector. With the exception of some of the items that we have to import because they are not available in South Africa, for example, head-hardened rails, R260 rails. Where R260 rails are still available in South Africa, but not vacuum degassed, fully vacuum degassed or head-hardened. So, with the exception of some of our imports, everything else, all the processing downstream is all produced in South Africa. So we comply very much with government's local content requirements. And we successfully, well, recently very successfully managed to get an exemption from the Department of Trade and Industry on some of our imports.
And that exemption is around things that are actually not available in country.
Correct, Philippa. As you know, going back many years now, but I believe in the mid-90s, ISCO heavy section mill in Pretoria, they used to produce rails in South Africa. Once that mill closed, there was no local producers anymore. So the head-hardened rails and high-specification rails were all imported from Europe. And via our sister company in Austria, voestalpine VAE, the rails have been coming into South Africa for the past 20 years and supplied into the local market.
Is there sufficient volume to even quantify putting that kind of manufacturing capacity back in place?
We've had extensive discussions with DTI as well as a sister company in Austria. To put, for example, a rolling mill in South Africa, we are led to believe you need volumes of approximately 250,000 tons a year to make the rolling mill viable.
Yeah.
In the absence of those volumes, it starts becoming a bit of a challenge. In the South African market, as well as our extended market being more sub-Saharan Africa, to achieve those volumes would be an extreme stretch. I think that most volumes that have been supplied in the market is in the vicinity of 80,000-90,000 tons in 1 year, of which 40% of that would be into Africa. So justifying a full investment of that magnitude, at the moment I do not believe or foresee such an investment happening. It's economies of scale. We had similar experiences with our manganese crossings, where in former days manganese crossings were produced by a foundry in South Africa, but with dwindling volumes, the foundry at one got to a point where they just said not worth our while and closed down. We were then forced to import crossings, which we also get from a sister company in Spain or France, depending which one. But yes, the volumes are limited for the technology and investment required into the crossings.
What other products does VAE supply?
We also got involved into the signaling market. We don't supply turnkey signaling solutions, however we do supply a lot of signaling products, switch machines, asset infrastructure monitoring systems, axle counters, various components, or various systems I should rather say. Unfortunately, with a lot of the systems, when we're looking at a local content perspective, we do have a certain challenge. A lot of the systems have been developed through our sister companies, Germany, Poland, Austria as well. And based on volumes, once again, creating local production for these sets is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a sector we are seeing some growth in, and we're trying to expand as much as possible. It's a challenging sector, challenging times at the moment, with limited investment in the market, but some good prospects moving forward. Other items that we also obviously do supply is based around turnout. We'll supply, for example, transition rails. If, for example, you go from a 48 kilogram to a 60 kilogram, we'll supply the transition rails instead of using permit kits to weld it up, step-up welding kits. We do also steel sleepers. We've been very successful historically with steel sleeper production and supplying into Africa, as well as to Bangladesh a few years ago. A lot of the African markets still use steel sleepers, especially from a handling perspective. It's very convenient, easy to handle, easy to install. A lot of the countries unfortunately do not have the machinery that South Africa might have in terms of installing sleepers and so forth. So the steel sleeper is cost effective
and still relevant.
Still very relevant. Still very relevant in a lot of the markets.
Talking about your supply into Africa, the African markets that you do look after from South Africa, would that be sub-Sahara only?
Most of our market is sub-Saharan Africa. When we get involved in other markets, it's mainly via our sales offices in Europe, where they might have a demand for one of their markets. So we try not to interfere in each other's markets too much, but occasionally there might be a bit of an overlap. So yes, our market is predominantly sub-Saharan Africa. We've recently supplied quite a few turnouts into Guinea. So we supply various gauges into all our markets, from the underground market, 750mm gauge, to 1067 gauge in South Africa, European standard gauge 1435, as well as 1635, I think it is. We've recently produced a turnout for one of our customers, 3 gauges, 1067, 1435, as well as 1635, I believe, for them to do some testing of their machines. Whatever gauge customers require, we can supply. We've got quite an extensive in-house engineering department that do the designs. They'll do the layout designs, manufacturing drawings, production drawings, everything else that is required. If need be, we do call on our sister companies throughout the group. They've got great experience. Let's use experience throughout the group in South Africa as well, if it is relevant.
Yeah.
So also from an African point of view, not only different gauges that we supply, but we also supply it in various profiles. South Africa predominantly is 48 and 60 kilogram rail profiles on surface. But once we cross over our borders into Africa, the profiles fluctuate and vary quite substantially. From the old BS 80 profiles to 54 kilogram profiles, all the way up to what we've recently supplied, the REMA specification, 136 pound rail. So we can produce to our customers' requirements, to their demands, to their specifications, to their design criteria.
I see that VAE is now involved with the African Track Technology Symposium being put together by Dr. Leon Ziman of Kimber Resources. What does that mean for you guys?
Philip, I think it's a great initiative. Leon taken on this initiative. Over the years, not only South Africa but also Africa, there's a lot of dwindling expertise and experiences in the market. A lot of the railway operators have lost a lot of expertise in-house, so they're not too sure anymore on what is required in terms of maintenance. What are world-class or state-of-the-art processes to do maintenance on their tracks? Life cycle costing is something critical in the industry. Every operator wants to look at the best life cycle costing on their turnouts. But to achieve life cycle, you need to do certain maintenance. You neglect a track, it's going to fall to pieces, and you're not going to get the designed life out of it. And then you start having to replace parts or components, or worst off, replace the entire turnout. So with this initiative of Leon, putting a symposium together to try and upskill the industry, not only in South Africa but broader Africa, upskill maintenance departments, upskill engineering departments, upskilling finance departments, the guys that have to put the money together as well, to get them to start looking after their track, to do the maintenance. Sometimes bare maintenance is what is required. A first off grind, for example, of a turnout or open track, regular tamping. So there are small things that can be done to extend the overall life of a turnout or track. So I believe this will go a very, very long way, very far way, bringing experience back into the industry. I think a lot of the African countries at the moment are very reliant on the West or the East for their technology as well as experience. A lot of them also come to South Africa requesting information on grinding, for example, or tamping. This will help, this will definitely upskill them, educated decisions in what is required and what is the best decision for their requirements.
Do you believe that this kind of symposium you mentioned earlier will reignite some of the operators' internal capacity, but also reduce their reliance on external contractors? Or do you think it will have a mutually beneficial relationship with the external contractor?
Philip, I believe it will be a mutual beneficial relationship. And why I say that as well is Africa has got a lot of constraints regards financing. A lot of it, for example, maintenance, yes, a lot of it can be done by hand. But unfortunately, part of it also requires machinery. It's capital intensive goods. I believe it can work both ways. beneficial to both parties, but also can maybe, I don't want to say ignite the demand, but stimulate some form of demand for possible machinery as well that the operators might require for their own tracks. Funding becomes a big issue.
When we talk about the maintenance of track infrastructure, you mentioned earlier a lot of it being able to be done by hand. That would actually have quite a significant job creation.
Huge. There's always a balancing act between, for example, hand maintenance and doing maintenance using some machinery. Obviously, one being much more labour intensive. And for Africa, yes, it might be the ideal solution. Time factors is also a different issue. Whereas, for example, if you just want to tamp a track, I'm not sure of the statistics, but you can hypothetically tamp X kilometers or X meters in a day using a machine. By hand, I would assume it would be substantially reduced. But the person has to look at what the operator's requirements are. Also, I believe with the symposium, what is quite critical to a lot of the operators is what they refer to as RAMs.
Yes.
Reliability, accessibility, maintainability and safety of the track. That's very critical in achieving also the life cycle costing of the track. A reliable track is going to give you your throughputs, but it needs to be maintained. If it's not maintained, there are certain challenges. I also believed in as well taking the SADA conflicts into consideration, where, let's say, more the SADC region operators are chatting to each other to interlink the network better, to move rolling stock over the networks better. It's got a huge potential. Not only for goods being moved, but also for track actually being upgraded to, let's call it, reliable standards. So that there is certain predictability that if a train leaves, I'm not sure, Victoria Falls, that it will arrive in Port Elizabeth or Durban after X days. But it can only be achieved once there is a reliability on the track.
So talking about reliability and VAE's products, what is the average lifespan of a turnout?
Philippa, that's always a very tough question. And I sometimes say, how long is a piece of string? Purely from a viewpoint of, if a turnout is well maintained, ground when it has to be ground, any material overflow, etc. We have historically, when we introduced our 1 in 20 swing nose turnout, for example, we stopped the monitoring of that turnout at approximately 850 million gross tons of coal that had gone over it, and it was still in great condition. Today it's a bit difficult to say. We are led to believe that the turnout crossings are not glassed in anywhere close to what they should be, but part of it has to do with bare maintenance. Bare maintenance from a view of simple grinding. Once again, as I said earlier, a lot of that expertise is no longer in the market. So I believe with the symposium that Leon is putting together, it might reignite certain interest, certain enthusiasm to get things done, and thereby ensuring lifespans of our products.
And that's quite interesting because I recently received a technical article from Nigeria Railway Corporation, and his paper is around the causes of derailments in developing countries. And one of his statements in that article is around skills, firstly, and people actually having an enthusiasm and passion around the railway environment. So I'm glad the sentiment is shared.
Philippa, we say in the industry, this is not a very sexy industry. People are not flocking to it. Maybe historic days, people were coming more and more into the industry. But the challenges faced in Africa are not unique to Africa. They're also the same challenges faced in Europe. Less and less people are being attracted to the actual industry. So the skills is an overall issue. Wherever you are around the world, it's an overall issue to get the proper skills and to just get that passion If someone's got that passion, I believe they will get it done.
VAE over the next 12 months, what does the company's outlook look like?
It's been a challenging prior 12 months with some of the restructuring we did, as well as all the construction we did in Isando. The prospects are looking very good for both South Africa, with various demands or certain indications being advised, as well as some of the projects as well. We're looking at, for example, the Wilmington project. Prospects are looking quite good. As well as for Africa, we in discussions with various companies or operating in various countries in Namibia, Mozambique, Tanzania, Guinea, Senegal. So we try to see what we can find. A lot of possible potential developments as well coming out of Zambia, Botswana. So yes, Zimbabwe is looking also very promising. Politically at the moment there is some uncertainty regarding some of the projects and investments, especially from a Transnet perspective that they are looking at putting into Zimbabwe. But all in all, I believe the prospects are looking good, definitely on the upside. And yes, I believe we will have a successful year again.
Fantastic. Massimo, thank you so much for joining me.